In the 1920s, Aloha Wanderwell became the first woman to drive around the world. Along the way, she made friends with Chinese bandits, used water buffalo to tow her Model T across rivers in India, and disguised herself as a man to pray in Mecca. Hetty Green, the Witch of Wall Street. Considered the richest woman at the time and renowned for her extreme frugality. Her net worth exceeded $100 million in today's money, yet when her son broke his leg, she spent a lot of time looking for free medicine until it was too late, so they had to amputate his leg. In a 1970s experiment, a Stanford psychologist and 7 other mentally healthy participants got themselves admitted to 12 different psychiatric hospitals across the US by pretending to hear voices. Once inside, they began acting normally. But all 12 hospitals diagnosed each of them with disorders, forced them to take drugs, and required them all to admit they had a disease before they could be released. Did you know? Jackie Chan's mother was an opium smuggler drug dealer, and his father was a spy. Charles Darwin was the first person known to put wheels on an office chair. He liked being able to roll around his office so he could study different specimens more quickly. The first person to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge was a professional high diver who wanted to demonstrate that people did not die by simply falling through the air. He proved himself correct by falling 135 feet safely through the air, only dying when he hit the water. Hitler's doctor injected him with a solution of water and methamphetamine, saying that was which he called Vitamultin. He kept a diary of the drugs he administered to Hitler, usually by injection, up to 20 times per day. The list included drugs such as heroin as well as poisons. When Thomas Edison was confined to a wheelchair in the last years of his life, his friend Henry Ford bought one too, so that they could have wheelchair races. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, most of the uniforms, worn by the Nazis in the Berlin book burning scene, are authentic World War II uniforms, and not costumes. A cache of old uniforms was found in Germany, and obtained by costume designer Anthony Powell, to be used in the film. In 240 BC, the Greek scholar Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth based solely on the distance between 2 Egyptian cities and the angles of sunlight he observed. His final calculation was within 10% of the correct value. Before alarm clocks were invented, people would drink tons of water before they went to bed so that their overfull bladder would wake them up around the time they needed to be up. The great impostor, who successfully impersonated a career as a ship's doctor, a civil engineer, a sheriff's deputy, an assistant prison warden, a doctor of applied psychology, a hospital orderly, a lawyer, a child care expert, a monk, an editor, a cancer researcher, and a teacher. Ismail ibn Sharif, second ruler of the Moroccan Alawite dynasty, had 867 children, widely considered to be the record number of offspring that can be verified. Lenin's dead body is bathed and dressed in new clothes every year. His tomb is in center of Moscow, open to public, despite his death wish to be buried next to his wife. Fazal Din, a British Indian Army soldier who was impaled by the sword of a Japanese officer. He pulled out the sword, killed the officer who stabbed him and another enemy soldier, destroyed an entire enemy position, and walked 25 yards with a hole in his chest to deliver his report. Did you know? Stalin's guards were so afraid of him that no one called a doctor until 12 hours after he had a stroke. They feared he might recover and execute anyone who had acted outside of his orders. Diogenes, the ancient Greek philosopher, was mocked by members of the Athenian elite at a party, who were comparing him to a dog and throwing him bones across the room. He simply stood up, walked over, lifted his leg and took a big ol' steaming piss all over them. In ancient Athens, the world's first democracy, they had a process called ostracism, where once a year, the people could vote on the politician they thought was most destructive to the democratic process. The winner was banished from Athens for 10 years. In 539 BC, Persian King Cyrus the Great issued the first ever decree on human rights. He freed slaves, declared that all people had the right to choose their own religion, and established racial equality. Firing squads issue a blank cartridge to either all but one, or one but not all, of the members. No member of the squad is told beforehand if he is using live ammunition. This is called the conscience round, which allows each member to believe they did not personally fire the fatal shot. The Han dynasty was founded by a sheriff who was transporting convicts when several escaped. Knowing the punishment for this was death, he freed the rest and organized many into a rebel band, eventually going on to help overthrow the ruling Qing dynasty and install himself as emperor. Yasuke, a 16th-century African who traveled to Japan as a slave, caused such a sensation that a powerful warlord wished to see him. He thought his black skin was paint and ordered it to be scrubbed. However, they became friends and Yasuke was later given the prestigious rank of samurai. In 1901, a doctor was told mid-surgery that he was needed urgently elsewhere, to which he responded that he could not leave even for the President of the United States. He was then told he needed to operate on William McKinley, the President of the United States. The inventor of Vaseline was such a firm believer in its medicinal properties that he claimed to have eaten a spoonful of it a day. During a bout of pleurisy in his 50s, he ordered his nurse to cover him from head to toe in the substance, and soon recovered. He lived to be 94.